They lost Willson Contreras, Andy, for the foreseeable future. And I was to understand that he was their best hitter to this point. So that strikes me as maybe not so good.
You understood correctly. He was the best hitter and maybe the only good hitter that they had to this point.
Best hitter, only hitter.
Only
Yikes.
hitter. So now we're the Cardinals' turn. Well, we'll talk about the ramifications of that injury and kind of the weirdness of it a little bit, too. Some breaking news, of course. Ippei Mizuhara, the former interpreter for Shohei Ohtani, pleading guilty. We'll get our thoughts on that at 5:25.
There you go. He's back in the news.
Man, it had been too long. So
I love that guy.
He's back. Do you now?
Shohei probably doesn't love him too much.
No, I don't think so.
Not anymore.
Probably not. The relationship's probably a little fractured, but we'll talk about it at 5:25. And
don't say fractured. Today of all days, you're going to go with fractured?
Oh, man.
What a jerk.
That was completely unintentional, but I understand. I'll do this to myself. I'll do it.
The bus.
I know.
These listeners, these Cardinals fans are going through it. You're going to go with a fractured joke?
Okay, yeah.
I say this is worse than the happy ending thing on KMOX.
No, that's definitely not true. Didn't go on to KMOX and start telling sex jokes. Come on now. I mean, first of all, I think there's been a whole lot of back and forth on social media, and I'm sure in the talk shows today, is that we're looking for someone to blame. Do we blame Willson Contreras? Do we blame JD Martinez? Do we blame the fact that all these teams are trying to steal strikes by asking their catchers to get closer and closer to home plate so that they can catch the ball a little bit quicker and steal more strikes? Who do we blame here for this? I just don't know. I don't want to do that. It's just really unfortunate that it happened in this way, and it happened as spot on as it did to have Willson Contreras essentially break his arm and now have to miss probably 2 months.
Could I talk you into a way where we can blame MLB umpires for it? Would you be on board with that?
Oh, I would love to do that. Would love that.
Let me see if I can find a way.
Nothing more.
I'm being a little facetious, but also I think with these situations, this is common now across baseball that pitch framing is prioritized. Catchers want to be good at it because if you're good at it, you get paid for it in free agency.
Yeah.
And last year, Willson Contreras in year one with the Cardinals was among the worst in baseball at pitch framing. And this year, he has turned himself into an average pitch framer, which is a big leap from what he was last year. He's made a vast improvement in the work that he's put in to this area that matters to pitchers, it matters to teams, and it's inherent to the catcher position that you'd want to be good at it. So he's put the work in. Now, part of that is he scooches up a little bit in the box into an area that obviously for him last night became dangerous, but he's not the only catcher in baseball doing it. And I think to kind of be able to be effective in this role, it's something that a lot of guys are doing. Now, you could blame umpires from the angle of, well, if they wouldn't so easily be fooled by catchers framing pitches, if it didn't work on them so easily, catchers around the league wouldn't be doing this practice at the rate that they're doing it to start with. But you know what? It's human error. It's tough back there. We make fun of umpires a lot, but they've also got a tough job to do. I can understand how on the low strike you might be able to fool an umpire every now and again and steal a strike for your pitcher. So, and I actually like that element of the game until it becomes a dangerous thing. I like that catchers can have this skill and can use it and can be a benefit to their team because of it. But where it gets into trouble is we might need a way to legislate a little bit where guys can be. Now, we already have a batter's box, but what do we see so commonly? Batters back up, right? They scooch back as far as they can. It's a minuscule difference, but every split second that you get to be able to track a pitch for longer is a benefit because those guys are standing 60 inches, pardon me, let's try again, 60 feet, 6 inches away, right?
Don't make another 6.
The math was, I knew the math, the wording was not so good.
Yeah.
So, like, they're going to back up. They're always going to want to be as far back as they can. There are times where game will start, the grounds crew has put that beautiful line down, and guys just stomp all over it, and they get rid of it right away, so that it's a little more difficult to delineate. An umpire can't look at that and go, hey, man, you're not in the box. And I don't know that I could say I've recently seen an umpire call anybody on that, Andy. Last night, JD Martinez, his foot was entirely behind it, right? Like if you were doing replay review of a tennis match, and you had the, what is it? They use the VAR, or what do they use?
Yeah, a little overhead,
whatever it's called,
bird's eye view. replay, and it takes 10 seconds, and everybody knows where it was.
His whole foot would have been out of the box.
Yeah.
That's my point, is his whole foot would have been out of play on that. It would have been out. But that's common. I don't think JD Martinez is the only guy in baseball doing that. Now, does there need to be a line for the catcher? The catchers want to be the best they can be, so do you almost need to protect them from themselves if you're MLB and institute, hey, this line cuts all the way across. We're going to add this line across the batter's boxes. Like, this is how far you can go up with your, whether it's a bird's eye view with your glove itself, with your feet, whatever the case might be. Maybe we institute that. But if we're going to go that route, try to protect these players from themselves, who has to be the group of people to say, I'm going to call on this fair or foul if it ever comes into play? Umpires. And we can't trust them to get balls and strikes right, Andy. So I'm going to blame umpires and say that there would be a solution adding some lines to the grounds, but I also don't think it would actually, you're going to trust that group of people to enforce this? I think we're up a creek without a paddle, if that's the plan.
Several things. 875-KTGR if you want to call or text us here and talk about the Willson Contreras injury from last night, as unfortunate as it was. It seems that, first of all, we saw more cases of JD Martinez in particular doing this, namely with last year with Willson Contreras and hitting him on a backswing in the back of the head twice. And it just a mere coincidence that I suppose it happened to his brother or something similar the very next year. But, I mean, I was hearing today, there needs to be a line, I think, for hitters to make sure that they're in the box. There is one.
They have one.
They have a line. It just
Umpires
needs to be enforced.
To enforce it.
It seems that Major League Baseball has these rules that MLB umpires, they'll let it slide here and there. And then all of a sudden, it's like with sticky stuff a couple years ago. Oh, we need to actually enforce. Oh, okay, all right, we'll do it. Fine, we'll enforce sticky stuff and make sure nobody's using that. Is this going to be the next thing? Okay, fine, we'll make sure that everybody's actually in the batter's box when they're trying to hit. Fine, we'll do that too. And then hitters are going to complain, like, well, I've been doing this for this whole time. Oh, sorry, like that. There's the line. You got to be behind it.
That's what it boils down to.
That's probably another line that we're going to have to make sure is kept in this sense.
And we're going to trust umpires to do it. So that's the inherent problem, is that we're going to have to trust a group of people that can't get balls and strikes correct to be able to enforce this. And that's tough.
But maybe here's the solution. Automatic balls and strikes.
And you know what would go away? Pitch framing.
Pitch framing.
It would go away
entirely. You would not
entirely.
need to reach so far to frame a pitch, Yep.
And I tell you, I like pitch framing until something like this happens, because I think I want to credit good catchers for being good at it, because it's a skill that they use and that they master. And I appreciate that, the art of baseball. I appreciate that element of it. But if guys are going to get hurt doing it, and you can look across the game, catcher's interference and instances of that call are way, way, way up. Not only last year, but already this year exponentially. It's continuing to happen. And when you have a high-profile guy get a high-profile injury, this isn't just a nick or a bruise. This is the dude got cracked with a bat immediately, and they looked, and within 5 minutes of an MRI, they go, yep, you can go ahead and announce it. Remember, Andy, how we talk about in-game announcements for baseball injuries? Maybe a pitcher gets pulled. Well, he's got some discomfort.
Right.
We go, uh-oh, that's not good.
It's not good.
You know what's worse? The announcement immediately, arm fracture.
Yeah.
It came immediately because it was so clean. You could tell it right away on the x-ray. Like, that is brutal. That's brutal. And so that's why maybe we have to start making some. Now, let me ask you this angle, because this is an opinion that I don't share, but I've heard. And I guess I might have already colored your opinion by sharing mine. But some people would say they blame, of all people, the Cardinals for kind of instilling in Willson that they want him to be better at this whole pitch framing thing. And they're connecting the dots to last year, him getting pulled from the position for a while, benched in early May. Granted, I think that was for some different reasons. But do you hold at all the Cardinals complicit in, hey, this guy made a change because of an organizational decision, as Ollie Marmol discussed it. It was discussed in the offseason, and they implemented it, and now their star catcher is out for, he said, 6 to 8 weeks. That sounds optimistic to me. I bet it could be longer.
Yeah.
Do you hold the Cardinals at all responsible? Whoever within the Cardinals organization said, hey, we need to go this path.
No, because it's absolutely conceivable that another MLB organization would have asked them to do the exact same thing. Just plain and simple. I don't think the Cardinals would have been.
Does that make it right, though? Should they have been followers if that's what it is? Well, everybody else is doing it. Maybe we should.
I mean,
does it make it
But it's all independent of each other. It's not them saying, well, all of these other organizations are doing it. They're looking at a catcher and they're making their own. They're making their own evaluation. Fair. So I
think they saw other teams doing it and they said, well, could this work for us? That might be a route that you go. And that's not the worst way to. That happens in baseball and in sports all the time.
Yeah.
Every league is a copycat league because people want to. If someone's got an edge, everybody else wants to try and match it. Now, is there an element of they maybe didn't consider the full ramifications? I would say no, because this was discussed. Ollie Marmol even said, there are risks to it, obviously. I think we knew that. But I just don't like I think it's piling on to a Cardinals team that's already struggling to say the Cardinals need to be embarrassed. I saw tweets, literally I got tweeted last night that Ollie Marmol needs to be fired if he told Willson Contreras to move up and frame pitches.
Give me a break.
Are you kidding me? No. You didn't say that 2 weeks ago when he was turning himself into a good framer and stealing strikes for the pitching staff that's been improved this year. That wasn't the take. It's a hindsight-only take to blame the Cardinals for this.
And I guess they should also blame Ollie Marmol for JD Martinez sitting so far, having a foot out of the batter's box. You should be blamed for that too, I suppose.
So you asked the question off the top, blame game. Who do you blame? I think the answer is it's nuanced, as most things are. There's gray area.
You blame the game of baseball that we have known and loved for so long, and I think the fix is probably automatic balls and strikes. It's probably the best fix. I don't know if it completely takes it away, because that system probably is, I'm not totally familiar with how it works in AAA, but I believe it's
challenge system.
It's just a challenge system. The umpire still makes the call based on what they believe the strike zone is. So it's still incumbent upon a catcher most of the time to try and make it look as good of a strike as you can make it, even with the risk of, you might still be wrong, but there isn't much of a risk for a catcher. If the hitter wants to challenge it, the hitter can challenge it. And so they're the ones taking the risk.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? That's why this pitch framing thing, I think umpires, and again, I hate to pile on, but no, I don't. Umpires being as bad as they are is why pitch framing is such a phenomenon, because it used to be you had to be subtle with it, right? Just little tiny little movements with your glove after you catch a pitch, and you don't want to be obvious where you take a ball that's way outside and you move your glove real quick to the middle. And then, because the umpire you would think this is how it would work. The umpire would look at you and go, "You fool, I'm gonna never give you a call again," because of how ridiculous that is. You're trying to make me look stupid. But here's the thing: a lot of these umpires, maybe they kind of are stupid, and so they're going to fall for it.
They're going to fall for it. They're not very good.
Catchers are going to do it because umpires fall for it. It's just like anything in life. If you have to read a warning label about don't eat this, like content not to be consumed, it's because somebody's tried it. Right, so when we look at when we look at catchers framing pitches, you know why it happens? It's because it works. It's because umpires fall for it. Yeah. So you might think, watch it on TV. Oh, that's so obvious. He took that pitch and moved it 18 inches with his glove. You know why they do it? Because sometimes it works, and there's not really a risk factor involved. So I think when you ask the blame game, catchers are trying to gain an advantage. Batters are always trying to gain an advantage. Those two have converged in the middle at a very dangerous place behind home plate with the swing path and where the glove is, and there's nobody overseeing it to tell one or both groups, hey, this isn't going to be viable. And I think that's where it happens. And Willson Contreras himself, he was pissed. You got to know he was pissed, right?
Yeah.
He's having a career year. He's leading the Cardinals in OPS. He's got a career high in all of these statistical categories, leading them in home runs. And gets his arm cracked, and he knows immediately it's not good. He's got to be upset. But you know what he said last night? He said, I don't want to blame anybody. I don't want to be here blaming anybody. However, I do think that's a guy that's 10 years in the league, veteran, has some experience, should probably know his own swing. And so it's unfortunate. I just hope that it doesn't happen to another catcher because it's not fun. So I thought he was as tactful as he could have been under the circumstances. He could have gone scorched earth, man. He could have made it a thing. And instead, he said, he kept saying, I don't want to blame anybody. I don't want to blame anybody. But I also, look at what happened here. Can we, it was a subtle call out to the powers that be to say, hey, can we try to not let this happen to the next catcher? And I thought Wilson's attitude was aces. Everything this guy does should make him your favorite Cardinal listener out there in Cardinals land, because he just continues to be aces. All-Star break, I think you're looking at for him, give or take, and that sucks because he should have been the damn starter in the All-Star game. He had been earning that type of trajectory, and now he's going to be on the shelf for a couple of months. And do the Cardinals survive it? I think is going to be the next kind of topic of conversation around this, Andy, because we haven't gotten into the game yet. I'm sure we'll get a chance to do that, but they didn't win that game last night.
No.
And they're kind of dropping like a rock right now. So
yeah, what do you feel about the Willson Contreras injury? 875-KTGR. Call or text us here on the show to get your thoughts in. We got Paul here on the KTGR hotline now. Paul, what you got?
Hey, doing great today. Appreciate the rain out. It helps make you a little bit more positive. And
right.
with the Cardinals in last place for a year and a quarter, we can look forward to the draft, hopefully in June. We should have a high draft pick since we finished in the bottom part of the league last year, and we'll have another high pick the following year. So maybe we can get some young talent to replace these guys that can bat 200 at best.
I mean, at least that. Appreciate the call, Paul, here on the Big Show KTGR.
Number 7. Cardinals are number 7 overall. I think it's July. The draft is now like an all-star game festivity where they'll do. But, yeah, Cardinals are number 7. So, maybe there's a chance to pick up a marquee player there. But as we know, it's rare unless you're Paul Skeens. And the Pirates, are finally, it sounds like, going to bring him up later on this week. But typically, you're not getting those draft choices impacting your team immediately.
Well,
maybe the Cardinals can find one. It's happening more and more, but it's not.
Langford for the Rangers. He was like 3 or 4. I mean, in the top 10 picks, you've got a pretty decent shot, I would say.
You need to be, and by the way, I think the Cardinals do need to draft a guy out of college rather than a guy who's out of high school.
Yeah,
because and they probably will. But I do think they need someone that can impact you sooner rather than later, with where they are as an organization. But, yeah, I think losing Contreras, Andy, is the worst thing that could have happened to the Cardinals last night outside of Sonny Gray slipping on the dugout stairs or something. He wasn't pitching. But him getting hurt, maybe he's going back to change his clothes in the clubhouse or something, and he slips on the dugout stairs. That could have happened.
Why are you speaking that into existence?
Well, I'm not. I'm just saying outside of that, that's the worst thing that could have happened to the Cardinals.
Yeah.
And they lost Contreras for a good chunk of time. How are they going to respond to that? Boy, I just don't know.
It's a hard question. 875-KTGR. Call or text us after the Willson Contreras injury. Tell us what you think. Let's go to Nate here on the KTGR hotline. Nate, what you got?
Hey, what's going on, boys?
What you got?
So I was just going to say I feel bad for Contreras just because of how much he got vilified last year for all the Cardinals woes. I'll go across a couple of sports and say that I watched a high school game last Tuesday, a couple of days ago, where batters were just planting their feet on the batter's box, just trying to coax people to pitch outside. And we watched 3 or 4 batters get hit. So it's not just major leagues; it's across all levels. And then to your point, like on the idea of like automatic balls and strikes, like, man, it works in tennis. I mean, we get all these calls on ins and outs by these automated, whatever they have going on, where it's like they can automatically tell an umpire that you're right or wrong. Let's put it in play and just get rid of all this nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, appreciate the call, Nate, here on the Big Show. It's in AAA, it happens just about as quick as it does in tennis. Like, we know within 15 seconds whether it was a ball or a strike. Right as either the batter or pitcher, like, taps his head and said, I want to challenge, like, we know pretty quickly. And if that goes to Major League Baseball, I think it's probably only a year or 2 away, but it could work pretty well.
I am in favor of it. I think I didn't used to be, but something like this happening, again, I'm not blaming and saying, the Cardinals should have known. No, dude. This is something that is commonly done, and the reason it's done is because it works, and there's a risk associated with everything. And so I just cannot buy into the idea that, let's say that this is another thing that's the Cardinals' fault. There's plenty of things that they've done wrong and that are their fault. This, to me, is not one of those to pile on with. But if you go ABS, I'd be interested to see how it would play out. I bet you would see more runs scored, too, because you hear all the time about the AAA strike zone being not as tall. Like, the high strike kind of goes away with that system. Yeah. And does that end up causing pitchers to have to be a little more fine and throw in more hittable pitches? They wouldn't like it, but I think as baseball fans, we'd see more action, which may be interesting, too.
Yeah. I'm sure Major League Baseball is thinking more about it now with this injury to Willson Contreras, or at least they should be. Steve texting in, I like the challenge system talking about automatic balls and strikes. Like the challenge system, you have to keep some deception in the game. It's a game for cheaters. I miss the swipe tags that are 3 feet away from the runner. It is kind of a deke sort of game, or a game of deception. But you also have to get it right. That's what I'm most interested in, and I'm sure the players are most interested in that too.
I 100% would agree with that, and it's just when you're relying on umpires, it makes it tough. That's right. The thing. So anytime you can take things out of their hands, I'm probably for that at this point in time.
Yeah, or at least make their job easier. Then it doesn't. Essentially,
that's a nice way to say it, right?
Yeah, umpires that are stubborn and I know what the strike zone is. I'm sure the majority of umpires are going to like the safety net of an ABS system that allows them to get the call right, because I'm sure the ones that are actually in it for the right reasons, and most of them are, they would welcome that change. So I hope Major League Baseball does consider that in the near future and probably makes the game safer.